In today's video, we're going to go through a third quarter report for the Toronto/GTA housing market, go through some condominium, single family, detached prices, and the aggregates. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. You can find my contact information in the description box with regards to my email, my Instagram, and my office. Feel free to get in touch with me if you have any further questions about topics discussed in this video or topics discussed in other videos. Lastly, as a point of order, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Your support in that regard is, as always, greatly appreciated, but you're not obliged to do so whatsoever. But if you happen to enjoy these videos, feel free to subscribe, give a like, and it's appreciated. But let's get to the point of today's video, which is third quarter housing market report. I'm going based upon the latest Royal LePage report. None of my own numbers for this video. I usually go based on an aggregate of my own numbers, numbers from other reports, but this video we're going to solely go through the Royal LePage report as they have reported the numbers for the third quarter in terms of the housing market in the GTA and in the city of Toronto. And as I go through the numbers, obviously I'm going to provide some context in terms of the market trends and why you're seeing certain numbers. Anyways, let's start with the Greater Toronto area before we get into the city of Toronto as a whole. And as always, the timestamps are in the comments and most likely in the description as well. So feel free to zip through this video as you please and skip to the parts you want to see discussed. But starting with the Greater Toronto at large, and we're going to look at the aggregate prices, meaning this accounts for all property types before we get into a property type by itself. So looking at single family or condominiums by themselves, we're going to look at the aggregate median prices once again across all property types. In the third quarter of 2021, within the Greater Toronto area, the median price across all property types was $1,075,000. Now, when we compare this to the median price in the second quarter of 2021, so keep in mind we're looking at the third quarter right now, it shows us about a $40,000 increase in median price across all property types, because in the second quarter of 2021, the median was $1,035,000 as opposed to this $1,075,000. In percentage points, that's about a 3 to 4% increase in terms of median price. Now, this is actually quite impressive of an increase in median price, and I would be quite interested to see what the averages would have shown us, because once again, keep in mind this is median, right? Not average. There's a difference between the two. And the reason I say it's quite impressive is because the second quarter of 2021 was quite hot in terms of the market. And we're looking at in the second quarter, obviously, the months of April, May, and June, which were really hot in terms of listings that were selling at record paces. And although still limited supply, more supply than there exists at this current moment of time of recording of this video, and how much of that supply was actually selling at record high sale figures. So the fact that even now, where things have, believe it or not, calmed down a bit in terms of how many listings there are on any given street, the bidding wars, I went through this in my recent video where I said bidding wars are still very much so rampant. The further north you go into York region, where maybe like the 404 ends around the Keswick area, bidding wars there are still more rampant for single family detached properties, whereas in the middle of the York region around Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and certain parts of Toronto, bidding wars have gotten less and properties are actually going a little bit more reasonably, although you still have your bidding wars and a lot of buyers overpaying. The point here is things have calmed down a bit, at least in the more central to further southern areas of the city of Toronto and the GTA. When we look at the median price, we see once again a $40,000 increase. Now, my suspicion would be if that we were to look at the average as opposed to the median, we would probably see a smaller increase in price points. Because once again, the market in the second quarter, at least in recent months, September and October, has calmed down a bit. Don't get me wrong, still very much also a seller's market, seller-friendly market, and you can get a good price for your property. But the market has calmed down a bit, at least once again in the city of Toronto and in more southern regions of Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and Thornhill. This also goes for parts of Durham and also parts of Peel, such as Mississauga and Brampton. But nonetheless, we still see a $40,000 increase in median sold price. Now, this was comparing the 2 quarters. When we compare the third quarter of 2021 to the third quarter of 2020, so a year-over-year comparison, we see an 18% increase in median sold price, where in the median sold price last third quarter, so the third quarter of 2020, was around $900,000. To be more precise, I believe the median sold price was around $912,000. So once again, keep in mind, this is for all property types, right? So we're gonna get into dividing condominiums from single family later on, but an 18% increase, to be more precise, a 17.9% increase. This is not surprising to me whatsoever. I mean, the worldwide event only temporarily put a pause on sales and market strength of single family detached properties. A longer pause, obviously, and a longer bottom for condominiums, and condominiums are still recovering to this day, although they have pretty much returned to pre-worldwide events, if you know what I'm talking about, levels. But nonetheless, this is not surprising to me whatsoever. An 18% increase from $912,000, the median sold price of $912,000, to the median of $1,075,000. And once again, this is for the greater Toronto area, right? This accounts for all property types in all areas, anything from Mississauga to Durham to King City to downtown to Midtown to North York. Now the numbers get a little bit more alarming, at least, I mean, for buyers. Of course, for sellers, this is good news. But for buyers, it gets a little bit more alarming once we look at single family, just that property type. This can include detached, semi-detached. And when we look at the median sold price of a single family property or single family residence in the third quarter of 2021, we see a median sold price of $1.352. So $1,352,000. Of course, goes without saying, the previous median we talked about was across all property types. It was much lower because condominiums carry down the median price, as they also do the average price when you account for all property types. Well, now we're looking exclusively at single family residences and single family detached properties. Obviously, the median will be much higher, to the tune of $300,000. Now, even when we compare the third quarter median price for single family properties to the second quarter, so we're doing the same thing we did for all property types. Now we're doing it with single family and GTA at large. We still see an increase, and a quarter over quarter increase in percentage point of 4%, and in terms of sheer dollar amounts, about $50,000. Where the median sold price in the second quarter of 2021 was $1.301. So once again, around $51,000 increase to the third quarter. And what my suspicions are is that you're seeing a movement on the bottom tier of the single family detached property. Meaning, the middle options, so around the $1.2, $1.3 million price point, and the higher end options in terms of the price point, so the range of prices we're talking about, 1.8, 1.9, all the way to 4. I truly believe, and the numbers show me this, and not just the numbers, my everyday experience working with buyers. I'm very active on the market working with buyers. My experience shows me that those higher end options have maybe increased marginally, definitely not having dipped, but most likely are still where they were in the second quarter. Once again, if it's going to be increases, a very marginal increase. What has substantially increased, I think, since the second quarter of 2021 into the third quarter is all the lower priced options that buyers have been flooding into because they've been priced out of the higher end and the middle end options for detached properties. So we're discussing options in the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, maybe around the $800,000 range, where once again, you find further north, very far east, very far west, because buyers have no choice but to go to those areas, and the market forces in those areas on the supply side of things, the selling side of things, are responding in turn, where once again, I don't want to sound repetitive, but it's just true, and I want to point it out to you guys. You see all the rampant bidding wars and the voluminous amount of inventory that is selling at all-time highs above asking, at $200,000 above asking, with 8 to 12 to 14 offers on one single property. You're seeing that happen in the far east, far west, and far north region in the lower price point options, right? Because once again, buyers have been priced out, and it's simple microeconomics, right? And the simple law of demand states the lower the price of a given commodity, the higher the quantity demanded. And that's what's exactly happening with the lowest priced options. So I'm not going to attribute this increase quarter over quarter for single family detached properties across the GTA just to the lower end options seeing the biggest jump in sold prices in terms of median and average, but it definitely plays an integral role. And once again, I see it every day on a personal basis when I work with buyers in the field, and also looking at the numbers of what's selling in market trends. But that's quarter over quarter. And once again, when we compare year over year, so the third quarter of 2021 to the third quarter of 2020, we continue to see the biggest increase here, actually, an increase of 24% in terms of the median sold price, where the median sold price in the third quarter of 2020 was $1,088,000. We're looking at a median of 1.35. We were looking at a median of 1.08 last quarter, rather, once again, third quarter of 2020. Now let's end the GTA at large before we get into Toronto specifically. Let's end with condos across the GTA. In the third quarter of 2021, in terms of condominiums across the GTA, the median sold price was $645,000. This represented a $15,000, and in terms of percentage, a 2.4% price increase quarter over quarter when we compare it to the median sold price in the second quarter of 2021, wherein the median sold price was around 630. So going from 630 to 645. And this increase to me is not that surprising because it's a very modest increase. It's not nothing. It's obviously $15,000. And when we're looking at the third quarter, we're talking about 2 months of the summer and into the fall and September, but we're talking about July, August, September here. And to me, it's not surprising. I think July and August, by all measures, by all metrics, for resale, at least for resale condominiums, was quite tempered. Once again, it was on the spectrum of things, on the seller-friendly side, not to the extent of freehold properties, detached properties. That was far, far more onto the seller side. With condominiums, it was still on the seller side, but prices were quite lower. You know, market activity had calmed down a bit. And September, by most people's measures, and keep in mind, this is the time of recording on this video is October 18th. But September, by most measures, was also tempered as well. Prices did not increase as much as I assumed they would in September, all over rather. In certain pockets they did, but all over the GTA, they did not increase as much as I assumed they would have. Although they did increase, don't get me wrong, but not to the same extent that I personally projected and many others did. Nonetheless, the way I'm talking about it, it makes it sound like there was a dip in prices. No, quarter over quarter, we saw still a $15,000 increase. But I guess it's just to give you background as to why the increase wasn't more. It was a nominal increase of $15,000. Let's get to Toronto across all property types. As we did with the GTA, we went through the aggregate across all property types, then we went through single family, then we went through condominiums. We're going to do the same thing here. So in the third quarter, in terms of the median sold price across all property types, now just in the city of Toronto, we had a median sold price of 1.1. Now, this is where it gets interesting in terms of the numbers. Of course, before we get into the quarter over quarter and year over year, this is higher than the median across the GTA because obviously Toronto is the most central, most expensive city in the GTA. And obviously within Toronto, you have your own cheaper areas and more expensive areas. For instance, right now, affordable options, relatively speaking. So, you know, if you're looking for detached properties, affordable in the city of Toronto, you're looking at 1.1 to 1.2, maybe in certain instances 1.05 or even right at 1 million. Those options can be either found in terms of detached that needs a little bit of work in the east side of Toronto or the west side of Toronto. But that's just to say, of course, within Toronto, there's cheaper areas, more expensive areas, but it shouldn't be surprising to you as to why Toronto as a whole, you know, the median is across all property types is higher. Median across all property types will be even higher, as we will get to when we just look at single family, right? Because condominiums are baked into these figures. And there's a lot of inventory within the city of Toronto in terms of condominiums. Point here is when we look at quarter over quarter across all property types, we see a 0.04% decrease in prices, not even 0.5% decrease in prices, where the median in the second quarter of 2021, according to the Toronto real estate market, the median price was $1,115,000. Now we're looking at $1,110,000. So just $5,000 dip in prices. And of course, once again, this is made up of both condominiums and single family, and we'll get to those numbers later, and those numbers will actually help to further illuminate why there is a $5,000 drop in prices. And once again, I don't want to make such a big deal about this because it's only $5,000 drop. As I always say, when it's 0.5% higher or lower, even less than 0.5%, that comes down to honestly a handful of transactions. We could pretty much think of the price as staying relatively the same, although literally it's not the same. Practically, for our purposes, prices remain pretty much the same. But as to why this happened, some of the condo and freehold property numbers will illuminate this further as I go through them. But quickly here, the Toronto real estate market, quarter over quarter, when we compare it to the second quarter of 2021, when things were very hot, in terms of prices, sheer sold prices and median sold prices, things have stayed relatively the same, but in terms of market activity, so the number of listings, the number of showings, buyer competition, things have diminished a little bit. And that, once again, this is why earlier in the video I was discussing how out of 10 listings for a property on sale in the city of Toronto, 4 of them will be around market value. It's no longer the case where out of those 10, all 10 are for bidding wars and you get 15 offers, 10 offers per listing, right? That still happens for listings here and there, but to a far lesser extent. But in terms of market activity, things have calmed down as of September, but not in terms of prices. Once again, my suspicion is if we were to look at the average, we would probably see somewhere around the same break-even point, or maybe even a little bit more of a dip, but I haven't verified that. So with a 1.1% increase in prices across single family properties in the city of Toronto, and then when we look at condominium numbers, those numbers in conjunction with this, it shouldn't be surprising to you why in terms of the aggregate across all property types, there was a marginal 0.4% decrease in terms of median sold price. But at a median of 1.5 in the city of Toronto, hopefully you can understand a little bit better where I say the lowest priced options for detached especially that you can find in the city of Toronto will be around 1.1, 1.2. And once again, when we look at the year over year, third quarter to third quarter, no surprise here once more, 12% increase, where in the median sold price in the third quarter of 2020 was around 1.399. And this is a common thing we're seeing across, at least thus far in the city of Toronto, quarter over quarter, either marginal dip, marginal increase, very, very negligible, but obviously year over year substantial increases. And we're going to continue this into condominiums for the city of Toronto, starting out with the third quarter of 2021 in terms of the Toronto real estate market and the Toronto condo market. The median sold price for a condominium in the city of Toronto was $687,000. This was a 1.1% dip. So with freehold properties, we had a 1.1% increase. With condominiums, we have a 1.1% dip. And obviously in the middle somewhere for the aggregate of all, when we went through that, we had a 0.4% dip. So as I aforementioned, now when we see the 1.1% negligible increase for freehold and the 1.1% negligible decrease for condominiums, it makes sense in conjunction with one another why the aggregate across all property types in the city of Toronto was a 0.4% dip. Moving past that though, the median in dollar figure was $687,000, obviously a decrease from the dollar figure of $694 in the second quarter of 2021. Now this can be a little misleading because in downtown Toronto and portions of Midtown, things are actually quite picking up, at least once again, 18 days into October. This doesn't account for October. And as I said previously, September by most measures was a little bit lower. I projected higher increase in condominium prices, and it did occur in certain pockets of downtown and midtown. But when we look at North York, when we look at certain eastern portions of North York, when we look at Vaughan, Richmond Hill, the condo markets did not increase as much as most people had estimated into September. As I always say, more and more, we have to very much so differentiate the downtown Toronto condo market from the rest of Toronto. The downtown Toronto condo market, to a certain extent, does have its own exclusive trends that are somewhat independent. Not totally, but somewhat independent from the rest of the city of Toronto. But for more condo numbers, you can actually stay tuned for my end of week Friday weekly condo market update, where I will go through October condominium sales figures and October condominium numbers. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and RE/MAX Realtron Realty. As always, you can find my contact info in the description. Feel free to subscribe, comment, like, and review. Thank you very much for your time. Stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you very much.